Alright, Chapter 14, Creating Your Own Commands. Overview is perceived the chapter of the MSS give you with a great deal of control over the computer system of the MSS and serve the general purpose because many people use it for many different tasks so that you can adapt the computer to work. The MSS lets you combine with the existing MSS commands to create your own special purpose commands. Technique is simple to make your own command creator with a text file with the container of the MS-DOS command, and you give it a special file called the bash file, valid name, exactly the name of the existing command. The extensions of the file must be BAT. To use the command, simply type the name of the bash file the MSS carries out the command contained in the file as you have typed each of them separately. Commands then create in this way are called batch commands. Shepard describes how to create batch files and batch commands. Also describes the remark command. Intent of the batch file shows you how to modify the MS-DOS startup procedure. If there are certain commands you also want MS-DOS to carry out when you start your system up. A batch of what? A term of batch for the origin and early date of the large computer. Most of the work will be done submitting with the DAC of the punch card of the data processing department of the punch card with containing all of the instruction required of the program to run correctly. There was no chance to interact with the system. Data processing personnel ran these job batches delivered to output. In effect, you do the same thing when you use the batch command because the batch file contains with all the instructions needed to carry out the job of the batches. You describe the set of the commands running one after the other. You can use the batch file to automate frequently use the command sequence to make the system more accessible for the colleagues of the application programs might know the MS-DOS as well as you do. How MS-DOS searches for command. The type of something in the MS-DOS system with the display system prompt. MS-DOS assumes that you have the type of the command with the file with a particular sequence trying to carry out the command. And check to see whether you type the name of the built-in command set of the directory or copy. If you did, MS-DOS carries out the command. 2. If you type the name of the built-in command, MS-DOS checks to see if you type the name of the file extension com or execute with the command file. If you did, the MS-DOS shift the current directory for the file, finds the file, loads the program containing the file to run. 3. What type of it isn't file name command? MS-DOS checks to see if you type the name of the file with the extension batch file. If you did, MS-DOS shift the current directory for the file. If it finds the file that carries out the command of the batch file. If the MS-DOS does not find the file in the current directory, it performs steps 2 and 3 of the sequence in each of the directories specified in the path command. Sequence is important because it explains why the MS-DOS won't carry out the command file with the same name as the built-in command. Why it won't carry out a batch file that has the same name as either built-in command or command file. Creating a sample file. Change to run DOS. C-dash change directory run DOS because you're creating your own commands in chapter system prompt. You a simple C drive greater than C drive insert to and keep unobtrusive. The system prompt normally shows current directory. You can simplify it temporarily by typing C-dash run DOS. C drive run DOS prompt. You can next start with the restart of the computer with the system prompt revert is shown with both of the current directory for the current drive and the current directory. You'll see 3 samples of letter 1, letter 2, and letter 3 doc. Type to the shown below to create the sample. Remember to press F6 or the Control Z to press enter when the C is Control Z. The C drive copied with the letter 1 doc. This shows the Control Z shift and copy the letter 1, 2 doc and Control prompt. Alright, creating a batch file. The batch file is simple text with extension of the batch and contained within the MS-DOS command. The trouble the way with the create a batch file. The batch is short, whether you're confident that it will work together. You can simply console with the console of the file. If you think you might tinker with the file before saving it, you can use the edit word processor for the console without inserting with the format commands and command codes. If you want to see how the commands work together, you can use the DOS key. The test as you go. Approach it described later in chapter 9, but they use DOS key to branch attack. Use DOS key to create a batch file. Because of the examples in the chapter are short, have already been checked for usability. Build a copy of the console to create your first batch file. You can go back to the correct and error and press enter at the end of the line and before, but you make a type error you can recover easily by control break re-enter batch file. Suppose one of the application programs use the word processor, you name the files that contain letter 1, letter 2, and letter 3 doc, so forth. You use the directory command fairly often to display the name of these particular files. Instead, type directory letter wildcard doc. Each time you can put the directory command in the batch file named directory letter batch. Type the file and create the directory letter batch. Copy the console directory letter batch. Copy directory letter wildmark doc. Control shift. Control prompt, first line, type name of the bash file. Second line contains the MS-DOS carried out. Test your bash command typing C prompt drive direct let or C direct space letter wildcard doc volumes in C drive and then shift the directory of the run DOS and the letters. It is possible that you see a double prompt file when your bash file finishes and show the double prompt. Don't worry about about this. First line displayed after the type of the bash command with the directory command. You enter the bash file with the MS-DOS displayed with the command in the bash file as they are carried out and type the commands yourself. You can match the bash command even easier to type the name of the bash for the first sampling L directory batch. Long run, however, usually better to make the name long enough to give you a good hint of what command it does, especially if you create a large number of bash files. Alright, displaying message from a bash file. The remark command doesn't cause the MS-DOS to do anything, but is a valid command. You can include the message remark command. The command form as remark and then the message. Although the command is especially useful at MS-DOS command level, lets you insert a message into the bash file. So to see how the remark command works, create another version of the directory letter batch that contains a descriptive message. Type the following. Copy console directory letter batch remark directory of letters directory letter wildcard.com shift Z directory letter wildcard.doc shift Z new version of directory letter batch replaces the first version created with a few minutes ago version of the MS-DOS. Makes ask whether you want to overwrite the file. Choose yes. Trust the new version by typing C prompt direct let. Remember, commands include the MS-DOS display the message before it display the directory shown in the following. So you get C rename directory of letters, directory letter, wildcard doc, volume show the directory of C address, letters. Carry out the same batch command with a different data. You've seen that MS-DOS commands include one parameters that can use to make an instruction more specifically into the directory command. For example, you can specify file name display some portion of the file on the disk of the parameter W option with a Y from the directory copy command. Another example that requires the two parameter the name of the file to be copied, the name to give the new copied parameters. Let's use the same MS-DOS command with a different data. You can give the batch file same compatible with the feature of the replaceable parameter special symbol will be put with the batch file. When you use the batch file MS-DOS replace the system with a parameter which include the type of the bash command. These symbols consist of the percentage sign file with a one-digit number such as 1%. You can use the numbers of 1 through 9 replaceable parameters. You include more than one replaceable parameter in a bash file. MS-DOS also recognize percentage 0 as a replaceable parameter, but reserve the parameter to mean the drive of the path of the file name of the batch itself. The number symbol identified with the parameter replace with the symbol of the batch for the command that takes the two parameters. For example, the MS-DOS replace with the percentage 1 wherever it occurs in the batch file with the first parameter you type the batch command replace with the parameter 2. And the second parameter you type the replaceable parameters can be used anywhere in any batch command. For example, you want to batch command would print a file by copying it to the printer. You already with the MS-DOS print command. Go through the example anyway. Illustrate with the replaceable parameter the batch file and need with the copy command. One replaceable parameter identified with the file to be printed with the bash command. We'll call the print to avoid confusion with the print command with the type of the file and copy with the console of the print with the batch. The copy 1% printage. Shift Z to type of the print batch command. Make certain the printer is turned on type of the following. MS-DOS display with the command after 1% of the batch command printer of letter 1 dot print the files. Figure 14 show the shovel version and print batch that you might create with the print other than documents. Each version contains the least of one replaceable parameter. The last version contains two. With the left of each of the version example of how the batch command would be typed and write corresponding commands will carry with the MS-DOS replace with the parameters of batch command parameters of the replaceable parameters. Each version of the batch file with the result of the MS-DOS replace with the batch command parameters is shown in italics. Shows prompt print memo doc print memo and comp print memo report. Show the contents of the print batch 1% printage doc percent printage 1 2 dot percent printage. Commands is copy memo dot print copy memo dot print copy memo dot print copy report dot print. Alright, replaceable parameters make batch files much more flexible. Batch commands need to be limited to handling the same file with the device all the time. They can be just as like MS commands to operate any file with the device. Canceling a batch command as well with the other MS-DOS commands. You can create the control break to cancel a batch command, but when you cancel a batch command, MS-DOS prompts you to confirm To see that create a short a new batch of the directories batch to the first display the entry for the DOS directory, then display the entry for the current directory run DOS. Create the directory batch file typing copy console directories batch. Direct DOS, direct, and Shift D. The direct display should be long enough to give you the time to press Control Break, type the name of the directory batch command. Press Control Break as soon as MS-DOS starts the display, and the Control Directory DOS shows you the directory of the DOS and the volume of the C drive hard disk. If you respond and no, the command beginning with the carried out with the MS-DOS, continue with the next command with the bash file type N MS-DOS carry with the next command which display with the current directory C drive C prompt directory or directory of run DOS. If you respond Y terminate question MS-DOS cancel the entire bash command and display with the system prompt. Type directory bash command cancels it, but it also type respond Y command property directory /DOS. Should directory at DOS terminate batch job, yes or no. MS-DOS return to the command level the completing batch command. Hard developing your own startup procedure. Each time you restart the system, the MS-DOS go to the startup procedure. They include the search for the root directory for the startup disk, the special batch for the name of the auto execute batch. File if it finds the MS-DOS carries out whatever command with the contain of the auto execute batch, you the whole of the commands you do not want to have, the type of each of the time you start and restart of the system path command. For example, as tells you MS-DOS where the first find command file for the hard disk prompt command sets the system prompt to show the current directory. Version 4 or later, MS-DOS creates an auto execute batch modifying existing versions as part of the installation procedure. Early versions of MS-DOS do not create the file automatically, but also because auto execute batch is useful, most systems include it. Although MS-DOS gives them special treatment, auto execute batch does not mean the file is untouchable. It can be any of the commands anytime. Should also be used careful not to change, delete an existing command, especially that didn't clearly understand. You can counter such commands auto execute batch, particularly on the system that can activate the network that those have been set up by someone else. Your following examples show some of the commands you might include with the auto execute batch. Tailor MS-DOS computer most closely to the needs, the preferences you follow with the examples. However, you replace the auto execute batch file you will have now. So before you start, you check the for and protect your existing file. Or to safety check, it is easy to check the auto execute batch. Remember that it must also be of the root directory, system directory. Some of the directory command does the job of the current directory should run still be C run DOS. Type of the following command, check for the root directory. MS-DOS response file will not follow down the auto execute batch. Won't hurt anything. Trying to follow an example, the MS-DOS response showing any entry auto execute batch. Type the following, rename the existing file so you want to learn. Rename the file auto execute batch auto execute sav. To type the directory command, you search auto execute batch the root directory. This MS-DOS should respond file not found. You restore the original auto execute batch later. Creating auto execute batch files. Depending on how your system is set up, you want to do that within the auto execute batch contain anywhere of the file commands mentioned earlier. How do many of these will include path command to tell MS-DOS where to find the command, and prompt command starts with the system prompt to display with the current directory. Although you use auto execute batch file must include more than 2 commands. Following example show you how to create such a simple auto execute batch file short. So copy console to create 2 of the following: copy console auto execute batch, rename sample startup procedure, path C drive DOS, C drive run DOS, prompt SP SG, money sign P, pound money pound G, shift Z. Create the root directory of the system disk because the MS-DOS allows you auto execute to start with the procedure. You must restart the system. Be sure to open the latch, remove any floppy disk so that the MS-DOS restart with a hard disk. Now restart the system pressing Control Delete. MS-DOS might display some message before carrying out the command of the new auto execute batch, but regardless of your version, MS-DOS ends the startup screen like this. C renamed sample startup procedure, C path, C drive, C DOS, C run DOS, C prompt. So far so good, but as probably realized, simple bash file will just begin with a tap of the power auto execute batch. Suppose you want MS-DOS to clear the screen display the version number each time you start with the computer. You also want MS-DOS to change the particular directory display with the directory listing. Here's a new auto execute batch file that does what you want. You can use edit or word processor if you want to try editing skills. Otherwise, simply comply with the console again as shown in the example. The replace sample auto execute batch file with a new version. Again, restart the test and auto execute batch the time C with the briefly as you see C drive, JOS, C JOS run, and then it shows the version numbers of each. Start the procedure not only tell MS-DOS where to find it in its needs, also clear the spec for the display of the version number change of the current directory. The display of the entry of the current directory can also use the auto execute batch to handle special startup requirements. For example, your system has an equipment option that requires special start setup instruction with the mode command. Put the command auto execute batch that you need to type each of the time you start with the restart system. Once you have the device attached to your system, requires special program opera with a CD-ROM drive and scanner. You can put the command in auto execute batch file so that you do not have to enter the command each time that you start the system and all means, but put the command in load DOS screen the auto execute batch as it already. If you rename the executing auto execute batch file at the beginning of the example, have the following save the auto execute TS to restore the original. Renamed auto execute batch, auto execute TX, run DOS, rename auto execute SAV, auto execute batch. Now you return to auto execute batch, execute for the next time you start with the system, the version created with example, the root directory, auto execute test, in case you want to experiment with later. If you don't usually have auto execute batch file to begin with, this type the following MS- would carry out the example the next time you start with the system. C run dash rename auto execute batch, auto execute test. Version created with the example still the present of the root directory as auto execute test in case the prompt want to experiment with further. Finally, rid your system possibility invalid path command. Restart your computer pressing Control-Alt-Delete. Alright, some useful commands following example describe with a few bash commands you might find useful, but might also give some idea of the other commands you create. Each topic includes a description of what command does with the contents of the bash, one or more, two examples. You the example, the illustrative, did not handle the exercise, but because you might not have necessary files, devices, use them. Remember that they were there and probably find a situation where they can be helpful. Early in the chapter, we created a print batch command, printed the file with a copy of the printer batch, copy of the %1 PR to use the type of the print name of the batch file followed by the name of the file printed. For example, the print file the name of report doc, you would find print reported doc. For example, the figure 14.1. You can make batch command more specifically, including common parts of file name extension batch file. For example, the frequent and print file that have the extension doc. You can enter the command in batch file, copy %1 doc to print file number to reported doc. Would only have to type the print report. Or printing a file in a small type. If your printer is compatible with the Epson IB.matrix, you can use the mode command print 132 characters online. Type size handy with the Y report spreadsheets. Putting in the mode with the command and batch file name small batch makes up the easy small batch contains. Module LPT 130 132 copy 1% 1 page 192 mode in LPT 80. If the printer is attached with a different port, change LPT to LP2, LP2 to 3. Necessary for the small command, it takes in one parameter the name of the file with the print small type. With the small command, the print file report would be small report doc, MS-DOS for display mode, copy the commands, print with the file in small mode, LPT 132, not rerouted, set with a 132, no re-entry. Copy report doc, LPT1 mode, LPT 80, not set for 80. On the second mode of the command, resolve the printer normal type. Alright, we're eliminating old back files. Because of the menu with the word processors create backup files extension back. Each time that you edit the file, your disk can get crowded with the files you may not need. You type batch file in here to work together, let you find the back files on your disk, erase ones that you don't need. Find in the back batch consists of the directory commands of the S parameter to look for all subdirectory of the root directories and parameter B to display only the path file name of each defines. The backslash before back starts the search. The wildcard is the backslash before wildcard back starts the search of the root directory because all of the subdirectories are contained in root. The parameter S makes the command to find every back file on the disk. You find back command to locate the files that you want on the disk. Next, clean batch file contains the delete command with erase all files that specify the directory have the extension of the back. Delete percentage print wildcard back. To clean the command, take one parameter directory, name the file with the backslash, omit with the parameter command, or command cleans over the current directory, clean up with the disk, the different drive with the preceding the path name of the drive layer, and colon, example, use the find back badge to find back files. If you would erase all files, well, extension back directory, current directory, simply type in clean. If you wanted to erase all back files in the directory, mark it work processing, You would type clean, market work processing, erase back files in directory last year, report only disk and drive A. You would type clean, A drive, last drive, RPT. Alright, creating commands with Dosky. Dosky is included in version 5 of later MS-DOS. If you have the earlier version of MS-DOS, go to chapter 15, creating smart commands. You've seen how bash files can help you with the MS-DOS combined command with the perform special key with the create bash file. You copy to the console with the preceding example, the text editor for the word processor. You have version 5 or later. You can also use the Dosky. Chapter 3 and 13 show that the Dosky can help you edit and repeat MS-DOS commands as you've already used. Section introduced the several Dosky parameters that help you not only view the same commands of the either or two forms of other bash keys, keywords, short files, macros. Alright, batch files and macros. You know batch files set with the MS-DOS command save with the text file with the carryout with the typing of the name of the batch file. Macro is similar type of this work saver. If you create a macro assigning a descriptive name of the one or more commands, once you've defined the macro in a way, you simply type the name of the carryout with the command. If beneath the shape of the time of the keystroke, especially often used long and complicated set of the commands. In some respect, macros are very much like batch files. Both are creation, both cause MS-DOS to carry out one or more commands to do a specific job. Both let you start with the command sequence typing a short descriptive name. Dosky command parameters. Earlier chapter type of the Dosky. Start with the Dosky program. You view the function editing keys of the retrieve display edit command. Dosky also includes several parameters you can create with the view commands and macros. Three important ones are the Dosky history macro equals command backslash macros. Dosky with the name of the program and the type of the Dosky by itself. The DOS loads program into the memory, remains it, and for the turns on system off, and then restarts MS-DOS history. When you abbreviate the parameter H, tells DOS to show the list of all the commands currently in memory. You can also use the parameter history parameter to create the batch file and then redirect commands to the memory to file. Macro equals command inserts tell Dosky to create a macro. All these, as already mentioned, you also assign the name, show the macro one or two more commands. Equal sign must follow the macro name. Macro, which may be abbreviated for the M parameter M, tells Dosky the displayed macros currently in the memory using macros parameter serve the macros redirecting from the computer's memory where they will be lost when shut down the system to the file. Dosky includes a few other parameters you can use to control the behavior. You do not need the parameters here with the details appendix C with the MS-DOS command reference. Or using Dosky to create a batch file. When using Dosky to retrieve the edit command, you can type it earlier because the commands remain in a special portion of the command in the computer's memory until the turn off of the computer restarts the Dosky until you have typed some of the commands of the oldest one discover to make the room for the newer ones. Those commands remain in the memory. You can use the Dosky alternative with the tab for the editing of the creating some batch file. Following examples show the redirect Dosky list of the command to batch file, beginning with starting with the Dosky type. C drive Dosky already running. Press Alt F7 and clears the list of command Dosky has recorded and ensures you fresh start. You now type these some commands: the change directory run DOS, C run DOS directory OE print, C drive run DOS change directory. The three commands: change with the current directory, print with the directly listed store with extension, return to the root directory C. Drive C. These commands could be small but useful batch files, keeping track of the files you create with your application, especially as you specify with the directory you want to list and print. Create the file in the two-step process, following either the Dosky parameter H of the redirect the command with the file examples. Either the extension batch, you could easily save the commands of the standard text extension such as text or doc. Type this Dosky parameter H and then list of the batch. Really, all there is using Dosky sequence commands are typed in. You want to save the command usable batch file. However, you work is not quite done. So you edit it to add a few finishing touches. Type C drive prompted edit list dot batch. When editing the display file with the run DOS, replace the parameter so you can specify any directory as you choose. Change directory run DOS to this percentage. Change directory to %1. Notice that the Dosky has included the command you create with the bash file. It has omitted the command of the void X number redirecting some future list unrelated Dosky to your batch. Some delete with the line calculated Dosky history and parameter H of the prompt list batch. Save the file. You're done. From now on, whenever you want to print the directory, enter the file particular directory sorted by extension. Just type the list file by the name of the directory Using DOSKey in this way can be especially useful with developing a bash file or certain command putting together will do you in the job. Start with the DOSKey, type each command you intend to use because each of the commands carried out immediately. You can use exactly what it does. You can also see how all the commands work together before you save them as a batch file. Or using DOSKey to create a macro. Creating a macro.k is just as easy as creating a bash file, perhaps even easier. Macro with the DOSKey. Type macro name equals sign in the command or commands you want the macro to carry out. Use replaceable parameters using the bash file, but instead of percentages 1, 2, and 3, so on, use number sign 1, 2, and 3s further in number sign. Following example of the directory mode compounds create some of the macros you might want to use in later versions later of the parameter O of the directory command allows you to show the directory in the number, the way, the name, and extension set of the date, and when the time subdirectory is grouped in. Beginning with a listing depending on what they're doing, and it might choose the later the directory. Any of the ways keep the trying minimum. Can create a macro for each of the list of the p parameter of the MS-DOS clause after each screen. If you haven't turned off the restart of the computer, clear the DOSKey memory by pressing Alt F7. If you turn off the computer, turn it back on. Type DOSKey to load the program. Now create the macros by typing DOSKey directory name dname equals directory 1 on parameter p. DOSKey directory 1 parameter OE parameter p. OS parameter OD parameter OG parameter. Now try them out. Use the DOS directory with example to type the dname DOS to list the alphabetical and the file name of the DEX DOS to list the extension the DOS dsize DOS to list them by size, date to list them by date and time. If you want ddice subdirectory C to list subdirectories in current directory on drive C before files. If you have a monitor, you can change between normal display 25 lines, condensed display 43 to 50 line mode command. You can create macros to switch you quickly back and forth. You might, for example, the preferred condensed display with the directory listing, regular 25 line display with the most other work. Type the following: DOSKey big mode, error little mode. Now, when condensed displays simple little, switch back to 25 lines to big. If you try to example the MS-DOS run ANSI system, it must be installed with the perform requested function needed to identify the file ANSI system MS-DOS. Part of your startup procedure chapter 17, tailoring your system, tells you how. You can also combine screen macro with the directory display macros, taking advantage of the DOSKey's ability to accept more than one command. All the system prompt with separate commands, pressing Control T. Macro, you do the same thing with the typing pound T or money T, lower T. For example, the following macro to the screen condenses the display list of the entry directories. Specify wait for the press of the key that returns 25 line display. The money T, separating the mode, pause, and directory commands. Although the macro is on 2 lines, doesn't enter until the reach of the end. And then it shows DOSKey direction 43 mode con lines, and then do see the condensed load, see what the DOS directory you would like the directory 43 DOS. Alright, saving macros for later use. Although macros act much like batch files, you store the computer memory, not only the disk they are saved to turn off the restart. You can save the macros. Create either parameter H or parameter M to redirect the macros in the file. The difference between two parameters are important. If the macro definition command with a list of command, the DOSKey can retrieve the parameter H, save the command with the created macro. If the macros currently the computer with a memory with a parameter M, save the macros. To see how the parameter works with the parameter H, save the macros definition. Currently in current memory, computer's memory, DOSKey, parameter H, macros, SLTX. Now save the macro themselves by typing DOSKey, parameter M, prompt, macros, to text. Use the type of the command, the view of the two files, the command save the prompt EBS looks for something you probably won't see if you would have been trying out macros because of the other commands will take space in the list and show the file saved. Then the parameter M looks like this. Or the first file contains a command creating macros. You can easily turn the such file with a bash file, entering macro def commands, given the bat extension, deleting the last line, which will be something like DOSKey parameter H prompted macros 1 text. Second file contains macros created usable record of macros put in order to macros again in the next session. MS-DOS, you must edit the file with DOSKey in front. Each one of the turning macro on the command to create it creates it. You can then turn off the macro definition command with a batch file by giving the file a batch extension. Thus, although parameter m might appear to be more useful because of the save of the actual macro, the reverse is true. Each time you start MS-DOS, you must also define any of the macros you want to use. If you're going to save the macro, you want to save the macro definition because you must run the command create for the macro before you can use the macro itself. You can put the macro definition command in the batch file, run it with without any problems. You cannot, however, run the macro itself from a batch file. Even if you first define them in the same batch file, and set macro names are going to be typed only at the MS-DOS system prompt. Chapter 15: Creating Smart Commands. Testing.